Hello, everyone. I'm Mrs. Sherman, and welcome to Homemakers Radio. And I hope you get a few things done while you listen, which is the purpose of these broadcasts, just to have a little company while you work. Now, you might not be exactly like me, maybe not have the same preferences and tastes and likes and dislikes. We can still be friends, even if we're not politically aligned or religiously aligned. We hope that we can come to an understanding about the home and how important it is and how to have a good life. And that is nothing more than any of us want, is to have a happy, contented life at home and to have happy children and a peaceful home life. That's not much to ask for, it might seem like, but it seems like that's where we battle the most, isn't it? Anything that's worthwhile always comes with an effort and a price. So I have 3 sections that I do here, and number 1 is to your preparation, and the next one section is the actual homemaking. I won't be giving you many homemaking tips, but maybe just some information about the importance of the home. And then lastly, I try to talk a little bit about dealing with people, because it's so interesting, and you will be dealing with people because that's the most important thing about your home. So to begin with, I will read to you from Emily Barnes' little book here, Simple Secrets to a Beautiful Home. We just recently had a garden tea at someone's house, a lady that comes to our Bible class, and she wanted to do a special tea and have a tour of her garden. And of course it rained and poured, and it was cold, and it was overcast, but you couldn't daunt our enthusiasm. Everyone dressed up, had umbrellas. We walked around her garden and just enjoyed it so much, and she showed us all the improvements to her house. She bought a little house many years ago, and her husband added on to it and added an upper story and added a basement. Can you believe that he added a basement? And it was so interesting to hear the story about how he wanted a basement, so he hired some high school young men to come and dig one underneath his house, and he has a basement. It happened many years ago. I don't know if he'd be allowed to do that anymore, but I wanted to tell you about that, and that we have had such an interesting time. And so we'll start with Scones and Tea, which is a chapter in this book written by I'm not sure what company published this book. It's probably another one of those Victoria or Tea Time books. Yeah, it's from Tea Time magazine, and it's called Scones and Tea. And I got it on Thrift Books. Sometimes you can get these books for under $5 if they're used or outdated. And so I've been enjoying this one, and I like to start out reading this to you. First, I will say to you, please take care of your appearance. Now, I had 5 things that I listed that you could do. First thing, maybe take 5 minutes. Number 1 is, of course, with people of a vital age like me, it takes a lot longer to get your appearance ready. It just takes a lot more time. I'm not as naturally refined or beautiful, so I have to spend a little bit more care on my skin and my hair, and so it might take the full 5 minutes just to do that, or even more. And but I would like to say to you that when you are of a vital age, if you want to look younger and feel more encouraged to get to take care of yourself as naturally as possible, because that's very youthful. And what I mean by that is the less chemical, the less harsh haircuts, and the less dramatic makeup, the better, I think. But now we're not all the same. We can still be friends, even if we differ. So these 5 things are, first of all, I like to wake up slowly. I was a homeschooler, and I wasn't homeschooled, but I homeschooled my children, and decided I didn't want alarm clocks, and I did not want anyone forced out of bed. I don't want any shrill voices telling children to get up. And so they were encouraged to wake up slowly, reach for their notebook next to their nightstand, and take a look at what they'd like to do. Maybe if they listed it the day before, or make a list. So do that. Make a list while you're still half asleep, and then make your list. Your list is your preparations. That would be bathing and dressing and grooming and taking care of yourself. And if you paint on your face, you put your lipstick on, and whatever it takes to make you feel ready for something important, even if all you're doing today is preparing a meal or washing a dish or cleaning up a room. And don't give yourself too long of a list, because it can overwhelm you. And there's so much I could talk about this. I could probably take a whole video on why we feel so overwhelmed as homemakers. For one thing, we have to decide for ourselves what to do. And when you're working for a corporation or a company or an employer, they rule your life. They tell you what to do, and they have a procedure that you have to follow, and you follow it almost mindlessly because you don't have to think for yourself. It's all thought out for you. Well, when you get home, it takes a while to settle down and to get yourself going on a routine. But the routine will come naturally by waking up naturally, and you'll find what your need is next. The next need you have is head for the bathroom, and you get yourself dressed, and dress in something that makes you feel good, because it doesn't matter what you wear. You can always put an apron on over it, and if you've got clothes in your closet that you're saving for something special, and nothing special is coming up, go ahead and wear them, because there'll be more where that came from. God will provide if you need something else. And so I think that also dressing up for the home, there's a video channel I noticed. I haven't watched it yet, but it hasn't come up lately, but I didn't even take note of it. Didn't look at it, just saw it, and it said, why I encourage you to dress up in your home, or to wear your best in your home, to wear your good clothes at home. And because I discovered long ago that home is the best place to be, and there's no place more important. And if I have to go somewhere where I need really good clothes, those will come around, and I'll wear what I have. They'll probably be outdated by the time anything important happens anyway. And so the important thing about dressing up for the home is that it increases your sense, it reduces anxiety and increases your sense of well-being. So if that's all you can do, today, please bathe, dress up, fix your hair, do your teeth, floss your teeth, whatever it is, and look nice, and smell nice, and smile nice. And even if you don't like yourself very much, forgive yourself and move on. And it says on my list here of 5 things is to make your list of things that you need to do that are from the most urgent, and then list something that you'd like to do in your home. And most of the things that we like to do in our home actually enhance our home. Do you like to paint a picture? Do you like to write a story? Do you like to write a letter? Do you like to redecorate your house? I've been moving things around lately. I move a picture from a different room, and people think I've bought new stuff. And I always get such a laugh out of it when they say, "Oh, you've got a new this," or "Oh, you've got a new," because I've moved things around. And so they think I'm really out there buying new things. And so your appearance, so important to begin with, because it can reduce anxiety. And we as homemakers, the Bible says, the Word of God says, that we are to guard and guide the home. So we're responsible for the well-being of people around us. And it isn't just to guard and guide the household things. Of course, we have to be good stewards of those things, because if we treat a tool carelessly, or we treat a piece of furniture carelessly, it will have to be replaced, and it will be expensive. So what we want to do is guard the finances, and then we want to guard the mood of everybody. So that's why we're so careful, and why we care about the dwelling place, and we're the ones in charge of it. You can get a household maid or somebody to come in. You can pay someone to clean your house, but it won't have the same feeling or heart in it. And if you are cleaning your house and you're dressed up and you're going around in a in a regal, dignified manner, you'll notice things. You'll know where things are. And you'll notice the condition of things. Like, for instance, if you are washing and folding the clothes or folding the towels, you'll notice when something has gotten a little threadbare. You'll notice things, and you'll write that down on your list as something that needs to be either repaired or replaced. And so that's why it's important for us to do it ourselves. And so dressing up can reduce anxiety. Taking care of yourself can reduce anxiety. And if you'll dress up. Now, people say, I don't want to dress up because I can't work in those clothes. I can't, clean the bathroom you can. If the pioneer women who wore long skirts could walk across the trail or farm or wash and hang their clothes. There's so many paintings of people in the 17 and 1800s. Artists loved the subject of women hanging clothes, and the clothes hanging on the line. It seemed somehow beautiful to them. And if they could do it, then you can do it too. And just try it for a day, dressing up to do your work. I wear an apron that has the pinafore bib part on it. You can get them at Hobby Lobby, Walmart, and they're very sturdy, and you just put them over whatever you're wearing. And so do that, and it can reduce anxiety, your appearance. Okay, so your list. Make your list. Take care of your appearance. Have your tea. You might want to have your tea while you're making your list. And as I said, you don't have to drink, black tea or anything that you don't like. You make anything, put anything in a teacup. And so you make your list, have your tea, and I would suggest prayer, because after you've made your list, you can pray and ask God to help you fulfill that list. And in the end, you may not fulfill that list, but it might be that He knew what you were capable of doing and what was necessary. So you make your list, you have your tea, maybe while you're making your list, you have your prayer, asking God to help you fulfill that list if it's His will, and you do some exercises. And I ran across something of an old-fashioned way of exercising. I was looking for something to eliminate a terrible headache. I haven't had one in a long time, and it was too painful to do anything, to stand up and do anything really effective. So I found something where a lady it was a man or a woman, I can't even remember, where they talked about how to just roll your shoulder like this and then roll it forward like that. It wasn't a long time, just one each, but then shake your hand like this, shake your other hand like this, and then shake one of your feet and then your other feet. And then I ran across another exercise where they were emphasizing your hands, to squish your hands up, push them out in front of you. I could do that without much pain. And by the time I finished these exercises, then they had you bring your hands up to your shoulders and hold them tight and then pull them back. And just by doing these things once, it started to eliminate this headache. And it also said in a couple of the articles I read to have your head slightly above your heart instead of laying flat. And of course, everybody's different. Anything anyone says will work never works with me. But for exercises, you don't have to go into anything too strenuous. You've got to do something, though. Don't you remember in the olden days, those of you who are of a vital age, this shaking of the hands, because we would be riding and they would have to shake your hands and shake your feet, your arms, and move your shoulders. Those are just as effective as anything today, and they work as well. So I want to start out with Emily Barnes. I got this as a gift at the tea party. A lady had little gift bags, and she's always like Mary Poppins. She comes in with a big bag of stuff and hands everybody this bag, and there's usually a book in it and a couple of other interesting little things. And so I wanted to read the front of Emily Barnes. Now, she has been with the Lord for quite a while now, but back in the 80s, her books were so precious to us. We'd find them at the Christian bookstores or gift shops. And she she put an attitude towards homemaking that made you realize that work in the home also involved beautifying. And that changed a lot of things for me because I grew up in a large family on a homestead and work was grueling. We had the garden and we had piles of dishes and things to do. And she mentioned in here how to make those tasks fly by with pleasantness. And she had little touches that she would add after she did a job, or things that she would think about, or she would light a candle, or she would bring in a vase of flowers or something like that while she was before she got into a big job. She just had little hints, but I wanted to read her invitation at the beginning of her book because it applies to a lot of us. And just pretend this is you, okay? Please come in. It's an invitation. It's a welcome. Please come in to my home and to the pages of this book. I only wish you could really visit and share a cup of tea. We could lean back on the sofa cushions, nibble a cookie, and talk. And I do have a friend that will invite one person, and all she'll offer them is a cold drink, and they'll sit on a couch with cushions, and she gets to talk and visit with this one person and find out about them. And that way she's not real concerned about preparing all the tea things. I am shifting over to that more and more. It's a lot less stress. And although I do love these big gatherings and women just love to get together, I love to have one because then you don't have to worry about getting ladies back on track on the conversation, which sometimes in this day and age, sadly and shamefully, it deteriorates sometimes. We need to be careful what we talk about. And so she said, what should we talk about? About home. Not necessarily house beautiful, but a home filled with simple beauty. About my home, which I love, and which I love to share with others, about your home and you. Your life situation may not be like mine. Maybe you are newly married, just starting out in a tiny place, with a sprinkling of furniture and a few wedding presents. Maybe you live in a simple tract home with a struggling lawn, a few little trees, and little children. Maybe you're single, or maybe you've just moved to a smaller place after the children have moved out. Maybe your home is just a room in somebody else's house. We watched, my friend and I, she came over and her husband was working one of these crazy shifts, and so she spent the evening with me, and she wanted to watch a movie. I don't like to sit down. She noticed that. She said, you never light on anything. And so I did. I sat down and I chose a movie called It Happened on, was it 7th Avenue or 5th Avenue? It was an old black and white movie about a rich industrialist who left his home in New York in the winter and then went to someplace warmer. I don't know if it was Florida or South Carolina or something like that. But a hobo figured out how to get into this rich man's home, and every winter for the past few years he'd spent the winter in this rich man's house. He figured out a way to get through, and he even rigged the lights so that if a door opened, the lights would go out. And so if someone came in, that he wasn't sure of. And he spent his winters there, and he kept the place clean, and he dusted everything, and he left it almost better than when he moved in. And the industrialist one year just decided to come back for some reason, walked into the house, and the hobo met him and said, you can't come in here. This is for invited guests only. And it took a while for the industrialist to catch on that this man had moved in for the winter. So he just played along with it. And eventually his wife came to join him. And they they started talking about how life used to be when they just had a simple little cottage before they had children and before he became successful, and how much he liked the stew that she made, and so she recreated that while they were there, and she pretended to be the cook. And pretty soon more people came to this house and spent the winter there. And my friend laughed all the way through this old movie and enjoyed it. But I particularly was reminded of that by what she said about maybe your home is just a room in somebody else's house. So she said, your taste may not be like mine. You may prefer modern lines to the chintz and china I love. Maybe you can't live without a piano or wall-to-wall bookshelves. You may prefer chunky pottery mugs to the dainty china I collect. But, she said, you still, like everyone else, long for a home that is warm and welcoming, comfortable and freeing, a place where you can express the uniqueness of your God-given talents and nurture relationships with the people you love. You are hungry for a home and a life that reflects your personality and renews your soul. Yes, I couldn't have said it better myself. This just describes all of us, doesn't it? I love that she has a picture of a house on the front of it here. And it's called Simple Secrets to a Beautiful Home by Emily Barnes. I so enjoyed her more hours in my day time management seminars. Although I'm quite sensitive about this saving time thing, it's important for homemakers to manage time because you can't be recovered. And you want to redeem the time, meaning making use of something that could be spent in useless things or wasteful things. You want to replace it with something that's good. And that list, if all you have is that little list every day of your list, making a list, taking care of your appearance, having your tea, your exercise, and your prayer, and there might have been one more, I'm not sure. If that's all you can do, then you just do that. That makes your life worthwhile and helps you distinguish yourself from something that is that has been abandoned, or in your home. You don't want your home to feel abandoned. That's why we do the homemaking. So I'm going to read from this book called Scones and Tea, and it's from Tea Time Magazine. It's called The Smith Bird House. Now, I don't know if this is still, this is a older book, and some of these tea rooms are in bed and breakfasts and hotels, or what I would call, castles. They are no longer in operation, but this was written in 2011, so maybe. It's called the Smith Bird House. Located in the historic district of Prattville, Alabama, the Smith Bird House bed and breakfast and tea room is set in a Queen Anne Victorian home built in the mid-1880s. Ooh. But you know what? It's expensive to go to these things, and I don't want to discourage you if you want to go. I learned a lot about how I wanted my home to be by going to some of these things years ago when I was younger, and where they were available to go to. I just stay somewhere or go to a tea room just to look around, or go on a historic house tour. They do cost money to go on a house tour, but to look around, feel the atmosphere, get an idea of how these houses made people feel. And I wanted to bring that feeling into my home. So that's why, and I still sometimes go on a home tour of the modern homes. If there's a neighborhood that's open house, I'll go just to get an idea of what they're doing that makes those homes so appealing. The light, the windows, how the kitchen is arranged, and that sort of thing. And I try to adapt as much as I can into my own place. Right now, we're going through another one of those upheavals and repair work and everything, but I'm learning to live with it. And I've isolated myself back here in this room, and it's all staged behind you. In front is a disaster. But I wouldn't want to discourage you. And so I'm going to read about this tea time place called the Smith Bird House. The home is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Owners Beth and David Melling also live there, making it a quick commute to work. Yes, many of these bed and breakfast and tea rooms are also people's homes, which I think is a great idea. But when you go in them and when you're a guest in them, you have to remember that they're not like a normal public place where people are just a little bit less personal. You have to remember the furnishings and things belong to these people. You have to be very respectful. Guests have the pleasure of staying in rooms with names like Royalty Room, TEA. I've wanted my descendants to please name the rooms in my house, not just the rooms, but the corners. Because the corners sometimes will have a cabinet there or a table or something, and maybe have a different thing going on in that corner. I might even have a tea table in a corner, or maybe a nostalgic display of something in a corner. And I'd like for them to name my corners and name the rooms and make little signs to put on the doors or the areas. I'd like them to name every nook and cranny in here. But I love these names. Royal Tea Room and Tea Rose Room. And enjoy a full breakfast each morning. There is a bed and breakfast that I toured one time that is on the coast here in Oregon. And every room is named after a season. Spring, summer, winter, autumn, and there are some other rooms too with other names that are kind of seasonal. If I were to have something like that, I'm sure I would have a fog room, because it's very foggy here in the area that I live in, and I've learned to celebrate it like it's a special time. You could have fog, wind, rain for names of some of these rooms, or a hard winter, long hard winter. The dining room of this Victorian serves as, that's what they call these houses. It's a Victorian. Like they'll say, I live in an old Victorian. Serves as the main seating area for the tea room. But the formal parlor is used for overflow seating, as well as for showers and reception type events. Now, showers means they'll have a gift shower, showering people with presents, or like the song Showers of Blessings, or reception room or reception events. Tea room goers may indulge in the Queen's tea. See, on the menu it would say Queen's tea and what you could get at the Queen's tea, and then you'd have the Prince tea, and you'd have the Princess tea, and you'd have the Duchess tea, and it would go on the highest price to the lowest priced on some of these menus. The Queen's tea includes a quiche, a salad, a 3-tiered tray of scones, sandwiches and desserts, and a pot of tea. Or they might select the Just Desserts tea. That's so clever. Which offers a plate of assorted sweets along with a pot of tea, among other choices. You don't have to go to this tea room. You just make one in your own house. Just create. You don't even have to turn your house upside down. Just clean it a little bit and turn one table into a tea time, and make a little menu and have so much fun with your children with the menu and the tea room. And we used to play restaurant with my children, and they like to come with to take your order, and I just enjoyed it so much. I want them to come back. Or they might select the Just Desserts tea. Beth is responsible for making the scones at Smithburn House. The popular cinnamon scones are served, or scones as they say here in the U.S., are served all year except around Thanksgiving, when eggnog scones are offered that substitute nutmeg for cinnamon and eggnog for the buttermilk. David tried several recipes for his mock clotted cream. Through trial and error, formulated the present recipe, which has been a hit with customers. In all of our recipes, we use quality ingredients so our guests come away with the experience that is hard to find anywhere else in the area. This is very important in the home. You can save money on thrift items, thrift items for your decor, your furniture, other things, teacups and other things, but never thrift on food products and food items I buy. For flour, I buy King Arthur flour. It's non-bromated, non-bleached, and I have good results with that. It's a hard wheat flour, yes. You do have to adjust your recipe a little bit with the liquids. Makes a difference. You learn after a while through trial and error. Just follow the recipe, and I believe King Arthur probably has some recipes online that work with their flour. That's the one that I use. Some of the ingredients, like Meyer lemon olive oil and golden balsamic vinegar used in the salad dressing, are available for purchase in the gift shop. Well, we always make up our own dressings, put them in a little jar, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You'll also find everything you need to make a perfect pot of tea at home. And so, the Smith Bird Bed and Breakfast and Tea Room is 137 North Washington Street, Prattville, Alabama. I don't think I have any viewers from Alabama. I'd like to get more people from the southern states listening in to these broadcasts. And I think you could probably add a lot more in the comments too. If you are having trouble with comments, you can go to my blog and leave a comment. That's where these broadcasts will be embedded, so you can leave comments there. And on the channel on YouTube, you can subscribe, and then you'll know when my next video is coming up. And then go to the link in the description box, and it'll take you to my blog where it's also embedded, and you'll see the pictures that go with it and maybe a summarization of what I spoke of. So here's a recipe for their cinnamon scones here and their gingery peach scones, and I enjoyed that so much. And then they have a whole chapter in here on, that was so generous of them to put all their recipes in here. Very interesting. Okay, ladies, I want to talk a little bit about the house because, and I don't have any book or anything that I'm using on this, but we are in an era where women at home are the most anxiety-filled people, because here's what happens. When you've grown up in an institution, let's say a school, you went to a college, and then you went to work, your life is mapped out for you hour by hour, and by a dinging bell, that changes you when you're supposed to change, and you're almost like a robot. And then you get in your car and you go home, and there's music on the radio, and no one really has the space and the quiet to think. And so when you're home, you may discover that it feels a little odd at first because there's no one regulating you. You have to become self-regulating. And this may be quite difficult. A lot of women will go back to work because they just don't know what to do and they don't know how to handle it. But there's where your list comes in. But you're going to have to realize that anxiety can kind of come and replace all that noisy busyness that you had before. And so here you are alone with your thoughts, and your thoughts are jumbled because you're not used to organizing them, and you're not used to thinking for yourself, and other people may have been regulating your life for so long. And so the homemaking is going to help if you have a list and you go. I always suggest going to the wet areas first, the kitchen and the laundry room and the bathroom, and getting those sanitized and cleaned up. And when I say sanitized, you don't need to use chemicals. You don't need to use any of the detergents. I use vinegar, you can use hydrogen peroxide, and you can use some dishwashing liquid too for cleaning and washing. And because sometimes the scented things can create anxiety after a while. Over the years, I have developed an intolerance to dryer sheets and softeners, laundry softeners, Downy, things like that, and sprays and all just like that. So I have learned to clean with other things, and I'm breathing better too. I don't have a stuffed up nose. I don't get as many headaches. And so what I'm saying is, you make a list of the things that need to be done the worst, and the water, the areas that have the water in them tend to be get more bacteria and everything. So clean those things, your kitchen and the wet areas. I always make sure that those are well done. In fact, I can't get here very often to broadcast because I just can't leave a sink full of dishes. After a while, they start to smell bad, and it aggravates me. And I can't be at ease when I visit with you if there's something in there that needs to be done. But I've got it under control enough today that I could come back and talk. And so I don't have a book to go by for homemaking, but if you're really interested in getting into something intellectual, you can read Home Comforts by Cheryl Mendelson. And it was a great big thick book that she had been a lawyer, and she had gone into homemaking and raised her children and been a homemaker. And she said it was harder to be a homemaker. And she described selecting sheets for her bed and testing them out and seeing, which were the best, and whether a woven natural cotton was better than a synthetic. And this whole book would be great for a homemaking school. It's a hard book. She discusses everything from your laundry to your kitchen to your yard work to appliances to the light bulb you use, and it was a pretty amazing book. And there were other books that I enjoyed that I was given by women who wrote them, and I can bring them maybe some other time. But to reduce anxiety is so important to know what is affecting you. And I had a note here about how let's see if I can find my notes here. Give you a break from listening to me. Find my notes. How you're affected. Because in the home, you're going to notice things you wouldn't notice at work. At work, everything is shut off. Your nature is shut, unless you're working outside with plants. Your nature is totally shut off, and the weather is you don't even know what the weather is like till you get off work. And so at home, you're going to experience the different times of day and the effect that the weather has on you, the climate and the weather has on you. You're going to have to adjust to it, because you'll notice that sometimes you feel uneasy. And sometimes you feel extremely stable and well-being. Also, food affects you. Watch your food, because if it's not completely natural, it can have an effect on you, and you won't know why you feel as you do. Your body and your thinking are closely connected. I notice when I'm not feeling well, I kind of look at it as a signal. When I start thinking negatively or fearfully or have an extreme amount of depression, sometimes it's because I'm on the way to getting sick. Now that's harder to understand than being sick and then getting depressed because you're sick. But they're closely connected. And if you wonder, why do I feel so strange today, or why do I feel odd? Maybe you're not well. Maybe you are in the process of, getting sick. So that's when we used to, in the old days, the women at home, they'd sit down. They'd have a pile of reading material to catch up on, or books, or they had their scrapbook that they just loved to look at. And they had picture books and magazines that were mainly pictures. And they subscribed to these and thought that they were so important. And so your body and your thinking are closely connected, and I'll be reading something about that in Brian Kozlowski's book, The Jane Austen Diet. So know about these things, and also know about character and how sometimes we have to have what's called mind over matter. If there's something that needs to be done in your home and you don't feel like it, Sidetracked Home Executives, which became Fly Lady later on, taught that when it was on your list, you did it, even if the sun wasn't shining, even if you weren't in the mood for it. You could sit and rest a while and have a cup of tea, but always got up and did it so that you could mark it off your list, and became self-disciplined that way. And self-disciplined people don't have to be bossed around by anybody. You'll notice people that have their home and their lives under control, other people aren't as apt to boss them so much. Another thing that I've done that's been very helpful to me, I don't have a homemaking book that I read or a magazine, but I like to look at things, and I ordered this book by Victorian Classics called The English Cottage. They have one called The French Cottage. I haven't seen that one yet. I don't think I ordered this. I picked it up at the grocery store. And I enjoy the piece. There's no agenda. There's never bad news in it. There's never a discouraging word, but I enjoy just looking at something peaceful like that and thinking, oh, I think I could probably imitate that in some way. And what I like about some of the Victoria Hoffman Media publications is that you can imitate it. Like I recognize what that lampshade is and what it's made of. I could probably just do something like that myself and find things that I already have that might imitate that look if that's what I want. And I like the brightness and the boldness of how they use color. And then I love the back page. The back cover is worth you could just set this out on something, on a little stand, or just frame it, and I just love it. And they have these open door views often in the Hoffman Media pictures. Let me see if I can find something else that you might like. This one has a lot of white in it, and but still, I enjoy it, and I like to see other people's homes, which, we don't want to be busybodies. We don't want to be in and out of other people's houses. We thought that was important at one time because it's part of the ministry, to visit people, and I have not done that in such a long time unless I'm invited, but I enjoy seeing it in pictures, and I don't want to impose on anyone. We used to have historic home tours that I enjoyed going to. They're not doing that quite so much, but I also like the fact that they include the old buildings and the old architecture and that sort of thing, because I get to see it. I don't have to go anywhere. The other thing that is very helpful that women, I don't see them doing it quite so much. I know there are a lot of quilters, but embroidery. And I was talking to about this to my daughter the other day, and she said, we were talking about the awkwardness in conversations sometimes, and when people say things that are embarrassing or controversial or volatile or, that might cause a temper. I have been working on this needlework here for a long time. As a matter of fact, I like it so much. It's one of those screen prints that just has a few flowers that you embroidery on. But what the purpose of it was, she was telling me about this. Why is she so much smarter than I am? I wish I had her mind. But she said, Mom, that's where you need to have embroidery. You sit down in front of people that are talking and everything, and you're concentrating on this. If you'll notice, the Bennett sisters in the 1995 Pride and Prejudice all sat down on a row of chairs, and they were doing their needlework while Mr. What's his name came to see them. And it keeps you quiet, and you don't answer quickly or abruptly, and you don't interrupt because it keeps you quiet, and you think about what you're going to be saying. You think about what they're saying to you or in the group, and it really keeps away the awkwardness of that. And so I'm going to try it more to get this. I don't like to sit still and just visit. I don't like to sit still too long, and but if I had something like this with me and had something busy that I could progress in. My daughter recently has been going to a friend's house, her and her daughter, where the friend, she's elderly, she's of vital age, and is showing them how to quilt real interesting things like the hexagon square, which is all often called grandmother's flower basket, and they sit there and they don't have to keep up a conversation, and they're quiet and they're working on these things. And we need more of this because it settles your heart, settles your breathing, and you don't see it so much anymore. But I can remember just at the end of the olden days when women still carried their knitting with them. They never spent an idle, they never just sat and waited for anything. If they were waiting for something, they got their knitting out. And knitting can really calm you if you know how. Otherwise, it's stressful. But anything like this, and their embroidery. And Linda Lichter talked about it in her book, Simple Social Graces. These pieces that you see in museums now that are framed, and what the many purposes of it was. And so I encourage you, get yourself something pretty. You can get these. I don't know if you can find these. They're called Dimensions was the name of them in stores. I'll try to put the picture and some links to this one if you're interested in this one. To just give it a go. Just take it and say, I'm just going to do a couple of stitches here, and see if your body will slow down, and all the pumping in your ears will stop, and all the your blood pressure settle down and everything with some of these quiet things. And so let me see. Another thing I wanted to tell you about was this. Let's see if I've got anything else to show you. Was this it's called Children's Books and Activities by Dover, but you can get any kind of catalog that have these in, and I believe there's one called Current that you can buy. And this is full of coloring books. Well, the beauty of these coloring books is it's very good art. They have good art for garden, and they'll have a coloring book that's completely gardens, and the art is very nice. It's good. It's classical. It's really nice. It's not, and they have art with floral art. They have the seaside art. And what I like about these coloring books, I'm not going to color in them, but what I like about them is I can trace off a picture and paint it on canvas if I want to. And so I would suggest some of these if this is what you'd like to do. The other thing is you can get them for children and keep them in your home, but they have to be treated with respect. You can't scribble in these. These are very classical, very nice art type of thing. And just you can look up online if you want, and it's coloring books, because the modern coloring books are just so good, so much better. And so there's one here on butterflies, there's one here on houses, Victorian houses, gardens, and all of these can be used for other purposes. And there's one on wild animals, birds. There are some on villages, and you can use them for a pattern if you want to. There's also Bible ones, and I have one that someone gave me on tea time, and beautiful drawings of tea tables and teapots and teacups and Victorian women sipping tea. And so to get those, you can use them for many other things besides. It's just a nice work of art to have. Now I'm going to read to you from Brian Kozlowski's book, The Jane Austen Diet. And I know I've read this to you before, but some of you who are new here probably don't want to go back and look at some of the older broadcasts, so you might want to know about this one. And I love his chapter on the mind-body connection called Health and Happiness. And so you might have forgotten, one thing about being more vital is when you read something, it seems brand new again. And the mind-body connection to me is one of the most important things, is knowing how the things we do, the things we think, things we eat, the things we breathe, the way we walk. Somebody told me recently, how good walking is for you, and why people had walking gardens, and what they thought was so important about them. And the modern car has kind of taken that away from us. We used to be able to walk down to the village, get what we needed, and walk back home. But the car makes our thoughts can't catch up to our activities. Whereas you walk, your thoughts are in sync with your feet and with getting there. Whereas when we are in a car, you can travel 20 miles sometimes, and when you get home, you wonder why your mind is swirling, because your thoughts haven't had really time to catch up to what you've seen, and you've barely seen it. And so I might read some of this to you on the mind-body connection. But first, what I'd like to do is tell you that the lack of anxiety and the way to live mindfully and peacefully are all in here in the Bible. And I found a verse here that might help. And it was beautiful. For whoever desires to love life and see good days, let him keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. Let him turn away from evil and do good. Let him seek peace and pursue it. And when you pursue something, it means you hunt it down. And so, like, for peace in the home, I can't just say, well, we're all going to get along together. I've also got to have a neatly made bed. I've got to have a kitchen that's clean. I've got to have things available to use so our family can function. That gives me peace. And I have noticed that sometimes people are in the family are more tense when the house is in disarray. I have friends that will say their children are anxious until she gets her house cleaned up, and then they're real calm. So let's seek peace and pursue it. For the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayer. So remember that. Whoever desires to love life and see good days, let him keep his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit, and let him turn away from evil and do good. Let him seek peace and pursue it. That'd be quite a study, wouldn't it? If I had a school at Ashcombe, I might consider turning that the whole thing into a class. So now I want to read some of Brian Kozlowski's book, Simple Social Graces. Confidence and hope do more than physique. Cheerfulness gives new elasticity to our limbs and circulation to our juices. Someone who could use a good circulation of her juices is Mrs. Smith, Anne's closest friend in persuasion. Though suffering from a crippling illness in dismal living conditions with no money to pay her doctor bills, Mrs. Smith remains remarkably positive. Now, some of the online classes that I attend on YouTube for exercise, the Fabulous 50s lady, she's always saying that if you smile while you do some of these exercises, they work better. They're more beneficial. And it's hard, I know, if you're having a hard time. One of the things that I learned at this recent garden tea that I went to that this lady hosted was everyone there had a story to tell, yet they were happy and they were enjoying sitting around in harmony and peace with their tea or walking around in the garden. And all of them had a story to tell that was worse than anything that some of us, will have a little glitch in our lives and fall apart and cry. And some of these women had an awful time, and things through no fault of their own, but just that things happened around them and in their families that were tragic. And so there's always somebody worse off than you. And some of these women had suffered terribly, but they had gotten all dressed up. They were happy, they were smiling, they were enjoying the tea so much, and it was a joy to be with all of them, but it saved me from being the temptation of complaining about anything, because some of them had really overcome some things. And this is very important to know, that there's always someone worse off. So let me read a little bit more about I like this one. When Eleanor isn't practicing self-composure herself, she's reminding everyone else to do it. Be composed. Pray. Be composed. And remember in Wives and Daughters, when Molly was upset about something and Hyacinth, her new stepmother, said, "Moderate your tone, dear." And so I always tried, when my children were growing up, to be as composed as possible. It says, these are lines that tend to make modern readers squirm in their seats. It sounds uncomfortably like Austen is asking us to suppress our true feelings. And the Bible does say, take captive every thought. Some things we shouldn't be saying and aggravating others with and creating distress for others, because we want to lock up some things and not let them out to pollute other people. Sometimes our bad experiences shouldn't be relived in someone's mind. And sometimes relating what has happened to us over and over again makes us relive it, and then we feel the stress again. He says moderns don't like to suppress true feelings, convincing ourselves that we are happy when we're not. Apparently, Jane's quick answer to therapy is buck up and shut up. But it's far more clever than that. Characters like Eleanor are actually practicing one of the fundamentals of modern psychology, selective attention. Now, when I say psychology means the study of human behavior. And so there's all kinds. Even the Bible has a study of human behavior. And some of it we need to avoid because it's laced with things that are very detrimental. But this book uses the word. It is the common sense understanding that we can only experience negative emotions when we actively think about them in the present moment. Yes, I can remember as a child being fearful of something or worried about something, or having had a bad experience or an embarrassing experience, and I was just told that you cry about it and then you have to forget it because you can't relive it over and over. And that since the most negative thoughts are the result of either ruminating over past traumas or future worries, we always have the power right now, right here, not to give our attention to them. I'll concede this doesn't exactly meld with our current therapy culture and its endless requirements to talk about and analyze our darker emotions. But one of the fathers of modern psychology, William James, was saying it back in the 1890s. Quote, "My experiences is what I agree to attend to." Every Austen character is endowed with the same mental freedom, the ability to focus on either negative or positive emotions at any given time. "You must learn some of my philosophy," says Lizzie. "Think only of the past as its remembrance gives you pleasure." Austen calls it emotional courting, choosing your thoughts as wisely as you would choose your marriage partner. And he also mentioned in this book in several areas where they knew when to withdraw from a bad situation and go somewhere and cry. And they would say, "Excuse me, I must take leave of you." And they would just go. But they didn't have to explain it. And I will try to find that and read that to you the next time I come. Courting negative thoughts is always a dangerous business. In Jane's novels, it won't just ruin your happiness, it will wreck your health. Which brings us to the biggest horror of Austen world, stress. Stress in Austen world? Surely not. We watch these old movies. I wouldn't recommend anything past 1995 as far as the Jane Austen stories and movies, um, because I found that they are more the the ones in 1995, the recent ones, were more to the books. Surely not. What calm lives they had, those people, sniffed Winston Churchill. No explosions, no battle scenes, no terrorist threats. What could Austenites possibly be stressed out about? Their tea not being hot enough? It's a stereotype that has ammoed Jane's critics since the beginning. I should hardly like to live with her ladies and gentlemen in their elegant but confined houses, yawned Charlotte Bronte in 1848. Much too commonplace and neat for her wilder passions. Pardon me, are we all reading the same books here? Because stress is not the only much present in Austen world. It's practically an epidemic. Yes, people have read my book, Just Breathing the Air, about my childhood growing up in Alaska, and they'll say, well, it wasn't reality. There was no crashes and bangs and tragedies and stuff. But if you read it carefully, there was a lot of stress there that we had to overcome. Granted, Jane never uses the word stress like we use it today. Stress wasn't coined as a biological condition until the 1930s, but certainly she knew it by other names. A multitude of Regency terms like flutterings and fidgets and agitations and vexations, and above all nerves, are the historical equivalents to what we would now recognize as physiological stress. They fizz up in Jane's novels with vengeance. Once you take off the rose-tinted spectacles, you'll find Austen world is seething with some of the most intensely stressful scenarios anyone will ever face. Your son falls from a tree, nearly paralyzing himself. Persuasion. Your home may be handed over to a distant relative at any moment. Pride and Prejudice. Your once substantial income drops to near poverty levels overnight. Sense and Sensibility. Small wonder many Austen characters find it difficult to cope with the stress. Mrs. Bennet especially. The constant, some of you that have suffered grown children making the wrong choices and tragically having to come back home after failed marriages and such can understand Mrs. Bennet practically passing out and with her fan, such flutterings in my heart, and I'm having a heart condition. You can understand it, can't you? The constant frazzle of her 5 daughters and marriages is too much for her poor nerves to bear. She eventually snaps, becoming bedridden by the financial anxiety. Mrs. Bennet was really in a most pitiable state. You have to understand that when her husband dies, Mr. Collins gets the property and the house. She says she has such tremblings, such flutterings all over me, such spasms at my side and pains in my head, and such beatings at my heart that I can get no rest by night or day. And although they put it in the movies as her being a comical character, and that's exaggerated when she says those things, that to me was a very real thing, and I've seen people that are in that condition. They can't get any relief from the stress, and I have often suggested that just like everyone's into this intermittent fasting where they eat at noon and then they don't eat again until 6, that we ought to have intermittent anxiety, where you can have anxiety at 1 o'clock, but then you can't have it for 6 more hours, and then you can think about it again. And you cannot have prolonged anxiety. It's not good for you. It will seize up your flesh. It'll seize up your heart and your back and everything. And you have to have, we used to have things that would prevent stress or give us some reprieve from it. Women used to wash their hair outside, and just the whole activity of leaning your head over and scrubbing it and having someone pour water over it. And you would just give yourself a new hairstyle, or you would take a bath. People used to have baths, and they were calming. And you had bath salts and essential oils and things like that. And we used to go for walks long walks. We used to write letters, paint pictures, do our sewing or our needlework, sing, play an instrument. All these things are relieving of stress. But when the moderns got us all to working 9 to 5, there is prolonged stress. And even in the home, we bring that attitude in the home. We have to work from 9 to 5. You can't have a reprieve from it. So we have prolonged stress. And this whole system has got to change. And I believe that it's going to start with the home. So ever since Jane was young, stress itself was viewed as the right and prerogative of the rich and the well-off. The more stress you felt, the more you demonstrated to the world how truly delicate and sensitive your pampered self was. The common catchword for this was a heightened sensibility, one of the most fashionable afflictions in England at the time. And Marianne wallows through the novel that bears the name, feeding and encouraging her anxiety as a duty. Readers of the era would have found nothing out of the ordinary in Marianne's high-strung embrace of stress. What was extraordinary is Jane's response to it all. Do not give way to such gloomy thoughts. Rather than taking the normal Regency stance, viewing stress as an innocent indulgence of the upper classes, letting Marianne enjoy her sensibility in peace, or allowing Mrs. Bennet her nervous tantrum in bed, Jane makes it repeatedly clear that stress is not to be trifled with. It's no random pattern that stress sickens, weakens, and incapacitates more bodies in her novels than anything else. Jane took stress seriously. If you haven't got the 1995 or 1990s editions of the DVDs of Persuasion, Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, Northanger Abbey, and some park. I can't think of what the name of that is. There's 6 or 7 Jane Austen novels. You haven't got those. Why don't you do a marathon of all these movies and notice the stress and what they do with it throughout there? Probably relieve your stress just watching it. And we watch them through we like the 1990s editions because they go more towards the book. They're more careful. And we watch them for many different reasons. And some may be the manners, some may be the courtship, some may be the emotions and expressions, and just the little etiquette things. We might even look at the stage and the backgrounds and the costumes and different things like that. But I would suggest that you go on a marathon with these. If you're trying to get chronically stressed out in Austen world, Jane will usually threaten you with death for doing so. She says that Mr. Bennet says, "My dear, do not give way to such gloomy thoughts." And so I'll read more of this to you the next time because I think stress is a problem and can be a problem in the home due to the fact that your life now is going to be regulated by you, and you may be allowing in stress that maybe a business wouldn't. And you're more open to things. You have to start to regulate your life at home too by yourself. Now, I would like to read to you that I got a letter from one of my grandsons. He sends it to me in a pink envelope because he knows I like pink, and he's 11 years old, and he writes me a magazine. Every month he writes me a magazine just on this paper here. And the way he does it is he has a subject, and this subject on his magazine today is economy. But he has all of his family contribute articles. He even has a section here on art where everybody in the family, he's done it into little squares and sections. Everybody gets to draw something in the squares so that he has his art page, and so he gets them to do the work. Now he has his family writing the articles too. He writes an article, but then they do too. So, and we have an opinion article written by one of his brothers, and another opinion by one of his brothers. So I'm going to read one of the articles in here. The economy of the home. Homes have, now these children are all homeschooled, but they have businesses that they run. Many of them have businesses where they earn money for everything from home design to real estate to employment, and they do it online. Okay, homes have personal economies. If, for example, the family does not have a dictator for how much bread, peanut butter, cheese, honey, etc., individuals may use the pantry and it will empty fast and the economy will go to ruin. I'd love to put this in a play. And the narrator could read that. That is why a good cook economizes and puts things away in freezers so as to make it very uncomfortable and difficult to have a quick and easy snack. He's the one that always wants the slow cooker out there. He misses the slow cooker when something's not in it. He likes to walk by and know there's food there. And so here's another one on opinion. Economy. I'm trying to think who wrote this one. Page 5. Let's see, page 5. He has a whole thing on economy, and everybody writes about it. So here's one. It looks like written by his father. It looks like his father's handwriting. They all look alike. Economies make sense. If we consider why people choose to cooperate economically, we realize immediately that the vibrant economies work because they allow each participant to get what they want with a minimum of difficulty. Each participant is only selfishly interested in participation, but as a whole, all these selfish actors produce goods and services that satisfy the market as a whole. The free market also allows people to cooperate in the production of a complicated good, which would be difficult and expensive if one company were to make it by himself. Consider the pencil I am using to write this article. It has a graphite core, and he's got a diagram. It has a graphite core, and he tells who makes that. And it has incense cedar, which is from Sierra Nevada, and he has an eraser and what it's made of, and it says free markets enable cooperation. So I thought you might like that little tidbit, but I have other things here too. And one of the grandchildren does not like melted cheese, so he has ads. So the grandchild that wrote this book, this magazine, has ads. And the ad is Jeremy's Cheese Removal Company. He has a number there. To remove all kinds of cheese from your house, even melted. And it says, licensed, bonded, and insured. He's only 5. Melted cheese removal service. We will come into your home and remove all traces of melted cheese. Call 111-222-333. Okay, now here's another ad. Lazy. Are you lazy? We have the job for you. Full salary benefits, little or no work. Call this number. Telephone robots are standing by to answer your call. And there's another one here called a rock company. Call this number for rocks. Oh, and here's a really clever one. Rent a mercenary. Need to get that land for less? Just kidding, but it goes to show that we watch our government. I'm running for president. So I couldn't actually read all of it, so I'm going to have to get on our Thrive class on Zoom and tell them how important it is for them to write clearly so that we vital people can read it. So ladies, I hope you've had a wonderful day and a wonderful time. You've got a few things sorted through. You've cleaned a drawer, cleaned your closet, washed the dishes, loaded the dishwasher, or did some laundry, or swept, or made some beds while you were listening today. I'm sure there are a lot more pleasant things you can listen to. I actually have some things I like to listen to while I work. But I hope to see you soon. Please pray for me that I can get here more often. And Thank you for all you do for me, and God bless you, and stay close to Christ. Bye.